welcome to a new kind of video from me. So some of you might be familiar with my spreadsheet, which I should really make a video on and post to Board Game Geek and stuff already, because it's already pretty much ready for other people to use. So I should do that. But in my spreadsheet, generates a random assignment, hero, aspect, and modular for solo play. And it actually weighs towards things that you haven't played as often and away from things that you've played more. So um, I used that tool not necessarily to give me the heroes in this case, but I used it to give me the scenarios and the modulars. So that way the game kind of stays fresh, and we get some interesting combinations of things and learn some more things about the game. So my intention with each hero actually, but I figured I'd start with the newest two, is to do 5 sets of um, 5 sets, like 5 matches. And in those matches, there'll be best 2 out of 3. Each match will be best 2 out of 3, and I will start at standard 2, expert 2, which feels a little bit masochistic, and it certainly did by the time I was done with Valkyrie, as you'll see. Spoiler alert. Um, but I feel like if I do this, if I start every villain hero combination from standard to expert 2, and I actually go through with it, I'm going to have one heck of a data set for the difficulty of the various difficulties and the scenarios and things, right? So I'm going to work my way down. So for a standard 2 expert 2, so if we go through an example, so standard 2 expert 2 is the first match. I set it up. It's got that stupid extra acceleration token, all those expert 2 cards. If I win that one, I play my second game also at standard 2 expert 2. If I lose that one, then my tie-breaking game I still keep at standard 2 expert 2, which is different than if I lose the very first game, because that way I would want to say, yes, I managed to win a best 2 out of 3 series on standard 2 expert 2. Um, the other side is if I lose that first game, then I bump down the difficulty to standard 1 expert or standard 2 expert 1. Now, a lot of people argue that well, that actually is the next most difficult. And then the one below that would probably be standard 1 expert 2. But it's kind of up for debate. But standard 2 is brutal. So anyways, each time that I lose with this hero villain combination, I start to bump down the difficulty, unless that was my starting point. So by the end of these, if I lose each of these best of threes, if I lose a best of 3, so if I lose my first 2 games, then the next time that I play that hero villain combination, I will play at expert standard, probably standard 1 expert 2, and then moving down to standard 1 expert 1 and then standard 1. And so ultimately we'll have each hero defeating each villain on one particular difficulty, and where they settle will give me a lot of information about how tough a villain is or how good a hero is. So anyways, that enough rambling for that, but I did this. This is my first experience with this. um, and I have some thoughts about standard 2 expert 2, but I'm really excited to see the long term how this data works out. So without further ado, let's jump into it. So I did try out Valkyrie and Vision. Now, one of the requirements for each set of 5 is that each aspect be played at least once, and then I can choose which aspect to play twice. I didn't actually have that implemented for Valkyrie, so I ended up playing leadership with her twice instead of aggression twice, which is obviously her better one. But I had it for Vision, and I chose aggression because his minion collecting deck is awesome. So anyways, let's jump into it. So the very first match for Valkyrie was against Risky Business with the Badoon Headhunter and Experimental Weapons Modulars. I had aggression, and this is my very first time ever pulling Valkyrie out of the box. And probably shouldn't start on Standard 2 Expert 2 with a brand new hero, but into the fire, right? So the cause of the I'm including like cause of loss and stuff here. I lost a threat both times because I mean it's Norman Osborn, right? You're generally not going to be losing on damage because by the time you flip him, you should be able to kill him usually, or at least you have plenty of time to recover. But both of these times, I just got completely wiped by schemes. So the first game, I got Enchantress out on like the third turn, her Shadows of the Past, her nemesis, and it was rough. I had to flip down to get rid of the thing so that I could actually do damage to Norman, and that flipped the scheme to the second one, which gives an extra encounter card, which is just not something she can really come back from, especially on Standard 2 Expert 2. And ticking up by 2 every turn was just brutal. So I lost on S2E2 and then S2E1. The second time wasn't actually because of Enchantress, but it was just I couldn't do quite enough damage to Norman really to kind of keep up with all the stuff he was doing, and it just felt like a serious mismatch between the hero and the scenario. So I'm actually curious to see how far I have to go down in order to win this with this one, which is surprising because it's an easy scenario for most heroes. Um, I thought coming in that Chooser of this lane was going to be amazing, and then I did some of the math on it, and so you could bring something in for a net benefit of one card. Then you can kill it, which probably costs you a card to pay for Deathglow, and then you ready up, so you just get to kill something and then also do 3 damage for a net of one card. It's okay, and you get to avoid, when revealed effects and things like that. So in this one, I was cycling, I think, Hired Gun, um, but it just, I don't know, the so what wasn't there for me. I think, but so that one didn't go very well. So 0 for 2. Match number 2, I had Leadership against Absorbing Man and Ransacked Armory, which is really interesting because Absorbing Man doesn't have any minions in his encounter deck at all, and Ransacked Armory is all about augmenting minions. Well, thankfully it comes with one minion, so it comes with the Armored Guard, which is cool because I basically just got a souped up Armored Guard every game at some point. Um, so I went with an Earth's Mightiest Heroes Avenger spam like leadership approach with high thwart to try to just make sure that I kept the schemes under control with the high thwart allies, and then I could use Earth's Mightiest Heroes to just kind of whack him. And I tried to avoid attaching Deathglow to the minions if at all possible um, because I really just wanted to beat Absorbing Man down with Earth's Mightiest Heroes, and it worked on the second try. So I lost on Standard 2 Expert 2, bumped it down to Standard 2 Expert 1. One barely, I think I had about 3 health left. One barely. And then the third one I got just completely destroyed on damage. Um, it just wasn't, I couldn't get up and going. I wasn't going quite fast enough to keep up with how much damage he was spitting out. Um, but it was overall a pretty close match. Earth's Mightiest Heroes is probably something you should consider in pretty much every build for her. I mean, obviously Leadership has more Avengers allies. I know Aggression has quite a few as well. Justice not so much, Protection not so much. But Earth's Mightiest Heroes is just so good with her because it allows her to get an extra activation. Um, which is really important. You'll see what my thoughts are on her, towards the end and kind of things that I wish she had a little bit more of. Second thing, Ransacked Armory is really cool. I mean, I've been really looking forward to all the hood sets, and I think Ransacked Armory is kind of flying under people's radar because we had kind of a similar minion buffing set before that wasn't very good. Um, but I think it's flying under people's radar. The cards that came out with this were super cool, and I liked that there was always at least one choice. So like in this case, if I drew the Hollow Shield generator, I could go find a minion and attach it to it, so that there's always going to be at least one choice. Um, Finally, Absorbing Man's really tough on Standard 2 Expert 2. It's going to be kind of a theme. He was always, the best way to scale him up was to throw him on heroic, and he actually became a lot more difficult than some other heroes on heroic because his encounter cards are, kind of death by 1,000 cuts, little bits here and there, bunch of inconveniences. Um, like stuns, which in case Valkyrie was able to shrug off with the healing one, godlike stamina. But he just has a bunch of little stuff that they're actually pretty inconvenient in their own right, but they're not enough to actually make you lose. But when you start throwing in additionals of those and surging them and mixing in some actual real threat from Standard 2 Expert 2, he becomes a real challenge. He's still really burstable. I mean, 16 HP on his third thing is why I was able to even win the one. So match number 3 was also leadership, also against a little bit of a squishy opponent, Mr. Drang. with Hydra Assault, which, it was there. It's an okay, modular. A bit inconvenient for her because of the side scheme that the crisis icon. She has a real hard time with side schemes, especially, I mean, even in leadership here. Same kind of idea. I think I did the same thing where I lost the first game and then won the second, lost the third. I lost to both threat and damage. The threat was because I hit Enchantress, and that kind of made me lose all my mojo. And so I just couldn't quite race him well enough, and I got completely schemed out. I mean, once he hits that second scheme, he could, win if he gets an advance. Everybody has that problem, but you literally have to flip when Enchantress comes out, and you have to have the resources in hand to pay to get rid of the stupid attachment she gives you. Um, and yeah, I went on a bit of a rant on the Discord about how just unnecessarily punishing the Enchantress encounter set was for Valkyrie. Like, she's already kind of struggles, and her entire kit is built around activating and attacking things with Deathglow. So you give a Shadows of the Past that requires you to flip down to pay resources to get rid of something that you need in order to attack Deathglow targets, and also, you have to deal with the side scheme that you have to thwart, which she doesn't thwart. You have to flip down, which means there's going to be threat that you have to get rid of, which she struggles with. It's really rough. It was a really, really bad negative player experience for me. Probably the worst I've ever had in this game every time she came out. And then, of course, Drang hits hard, which usually isn't a big deal because you can, you can just chump block. But when you've got overkills coming in from I think there's one in the Hydra Assault. I'm not sure, but I know there's definitely the two in Standard 2 Expert 2, so that got me a couple of times where I just kind of got overwhelmed by overall damage. Um, One of the things about using this leadership style deck, I'm not sure I'd really recommend it, even though it's where, I got 2 wins. I'm not sure I would really recommend it because she honestly, it's really weird, but she needs those chump blockers. Because she doesn't want to keep them on the board to use for Earth Heroes because she only has 1 defense, and yeah, she has 12 HP, 14 if you overpay 2 resources for Aragorn. Um, but she really benefits from having those chump blockers, and so there was this uncomfortable balance between keeping them on the board for Earth Heroes and not dying, and I lost that in both the match 2 and match 3. Match 4 was, I mean, versus Thanos, with experimental weapons, using protection, which actually I probably her second best. Um, I don't know. It's between that and justice, but even justice, like, I'll get to that later. But protection, I built this. You know, Basically, non-defending deck, right? So if I'm not using Shield Maiden, then to defend for like 5 against, against the attack, then I'm using a um, sorry, I got interrupted there, so I kind of lost my train of thought here. But suffice it to say, yeah, it didn't work out very well. Oh yeah, my deck plan was to have defense events rather than, using my basic defense. So if I didn't have Shield Maiden, then I was using a defense event, and so kind of lowering the amount of damage that comes out. But one, this is Thanos, and two, this is Expert 2, and three, this is experimental weapons. And so even on the turns where I was able to play Shield Maiden for like 5 damage reduction or 6 damage reduction, it he still just kind of powered through. And you know, uh, I really felt the split focus on the kit this time in the few turns that I got to play, because I obviously wanted my Deathglow on Thanos so that I could use my defense events and Shield Maiden, but it it then he brought out a minion, and I couldn't actually kill it in one hit because it was a little too thick, and it just really didn't work. So these were over very quickly, as expected. Um, this honestly, I mean, Thanos with Standard 2 Expert 2 is going to be really hard, no matter who the hero is. Um, and then seriously, experimental weapons on him. he just has so many attachments to get rid of, and that was the other thing. Like some heroes, I could have gotten rid of his helmet a lot easier, and that's really important for her because she was taking a retaliate from every hit on him, right? Like, but she just doesn't have the economy to pay for things and then also do things to pay to get rid of hero attachments or villain attachments. And so then you stack on a couple like an exosuit or the laser rifle or really anything, and it's just more stuff that she really can't deal with. So this one was fated to lose from the beginning. I actually would hazard a guess to think she wouldn't be able to do this on standard, this particular matchup. Um, and yeah, last one, villain-centric Valkyrie really does need work, as we'll get into. So then the final match was over pretty pretty fast both times. Um, Standard 2 Expert 2 is just really rough for everybody, but for a hero that doesn't have a ton of flexibility and honestly really isn't all that great solo, any kind of chain in like boosts and encounter cards, she just really couldn't claw herself back up from. So, like turn 1 or turn 2, I got knocked down to 3 or 4 HP. I couldn't flip because then it would complete his scheme because, and she couldn't deal with it. And similar situations happened with Vision, but I was able to kind of claw back because he has the versatility. With her, it was like, oh, a bad thing happened, you lose. And that worked out this time too, even though I was playing Justice to try to control threat. I just got completely beaten down. Um, what do we do with Deathglow in a Justice deck? I don't know. Taskmaster has a couple minions, I think. Maybe not. Um, and then a mess of things had the one minion, but and I wasn't even bothered by the stunning from Mess of Things, right? Because I had superhuman or the superhuman durability, whatever it's called. And so, anyways, it was kind of a cool thematic thought, though. Hey, Taskmaster is trying to keep the heroes off the streets. Who's he going to enlist? Well, he's going to enlist, street level villains like Scorpion. So it's kind of a cool thematic thing that I wish I could have seen more of, but I just lost so fast it wasn't even worth it. Um, like I said before, her economy is just horrible and just can't recover from bad things in solo. So what's my verdict on her? She's obviously meant for multiplayer, where she wouldn't be quite as bad. A lot of these things wouldn't be too horrible. Her one trick about just slaughtering all the minions on the board, she's really, really good at it. And if that's the only thing that you plan on doing with her, then you're gonna do great. And so she just a dedicated minion slayer is always rough in solo, right? So if you think of comparisons to like Thor and Rocket, um, Thor is actually very similar, but because he can overkill a minion with his hammer throw and stuff like that, um, to do actual direct damage to the villain, but has slightly more control over schemes and stuff. But she just honestly feels worse than either of them. I mean, Rocket, you can keep control of the threat, you can kind of chip the villain. You have a lot more like versatility in your draw. You have a little bit of innate economy. Same with Thor. I mean, Thor's got an economy. Valkyrie just doesn't have one. And so I think she's probably better than both of them for controlling minions. Like she definitely it's a lot easier to control minions, like for multiplayer, but that niche just isn't necessary in solo. Um, I'm honestly thinking she's gonna struggle against even expert stuff. A lot of her villain matchups may end up being having to work its way down the gauntlet down to standard. Her economy with Deathglow costing one is just awkward. She has no innate resource generation really of any sort. Um, Valhalla is an okay upgrade. Like it's really good if you're playing the Minion Slayer build, but even then you only get the benefit once, and that's after you attack something, and then you still have to put the Deathglow back on something, and you don't have the resources to do it. So, the build that actually felt the best, even though I was getting my face smashed in by Thanos, was the Shield Maiden. Like, stick the Deathglow on the villain and just try to use defense events and Shield Maiden to tank it out. There's definitely potential there, I think, actually. Um, because especially on a little bit more reasonable villains and reasonable difficulties, defending for 5 or playing a defense event for 3 and then being able to to strike back and with her with her defense, her spear and everything, it just I don't know. I think that's probably honestly going to be her most viable solo build in expert at least. So We'll see. I have just like one suggestion for improvement. So you notice there was a couple times I was trying to burst down the villain, right? I was like, well, I can't really control the board if things go haywire, so our only chance is just throw ourselves at the villain over and over again to try to kill them with death glow attached. And that's the only time we got two wins, right? And what really hindered that, there were so many times that, not even just in those, but just in general, that I wish that Deathglow's ready wasn't tied to killing the target, right? So you can give it that as well, but honestly, I would just rather it be, I don't know if but anyways, just give it, like, if it's attached to the villain, give you a free ready for attacking the villain. So she can attack, twice a turn. That might be a little overpowered, I guess, but if that's all she's doing in the turn, maybe not. And so just maybe just add some sort of ready to her death glow besides triggering upon killing a minion, because even if you killed the second phase, the first phase that you're killing of a villain, it isn't technically defeating it, so she wouldn't even ready from that. So it just really, they really did her dirty with like trying to split her kit into, oh yeah, you can totally rush or you can minion kill, and then it's just not viable to rush at all. So I actually honestly give her a C plus, C plus or maybe a B minus, but I don't know, man. It's she's really rough. So that's Valkyrie. Let me know if you guys have any different thoughts or think that I'm not doing her enough service, but standard 2 expert 2 kind of separates the adults from the children, right? Think people, your heroes that have the flexibility to deal with BS do okay in standard 2 expert 2, and ones that can't just get absolutely squished, and she's just got absolutely squished. So I started with her, which was a mistake. I shouldn't have. I should have started with Vision, but I was honestly more excited for her. So now we'll talk about the Vision. So Vision won his first match against Taskmaster. He won. Um, let's see. I think I lost. I lost the first one, and then no, I won, lost one. So I ended up winning a set. So now that box is checked in my spreadsheet, which is cool. And it was very fun. I was using the protection build. I'll link the deck in the description, but I mean it's one of the most popular decks on Marvel CDB right now. Um, I figured, I tweaked it a little bit, but I figured I'm not really against net decking. I just generally don't. But I saw it. I was like, oh, that seems like about what I probably would have tried to do anyways. And it's all about just sitting in intangible, letting your energy barrier soak up some of the extra damage that comes through, and then healing yourself up with, first aid and reboot, and kind of letting your allies and passive damage kind of take down the villain. And it was a lot of fun. These were really long games because I mean you're playing protection and solo, but the ones that I won, I didn't really feel. Uh, Maybe there's a couple times that I almost lost, like in the first one that I won, where I was down to 1 HP or something, but I was able to kind of claw myself back from that with the tools that he had at his disposal, and so it was very cool. Honestly, wasn't all that close of a match. I think he won pretty solidly. Um, the one that I lost was just because of, a really particularly gnarly chain of boosts and then an encounter card. I forget what it was, but oh yeah, it was an extra activation. Taskmaster, I think he might have attacked me 3 times in a turn or something, and it just, having extra activation cards in the standard 2 expert 2 deck from the villain deck is makes it significantly more difficult. So things like Taskmaster and actually honestly probably Crossbones are a little bit more difficult. Like you're going to lose those a lot just to random stuff like that. This deck is awesome. Highly recommend it. It felt great. I wish I'd been able to use it again, actually. Um, oh yeah, no, and the thing that put me on my back foot, I didn't lose this, but I almost did, was there was beast mode out, and I was stunned from, Griffin attacking me, I think, and then I drew Shadows of the Past, which brought out Ultron, 2 drones, and then I got an encounter card. So I think I emptied my deck. I got an encounter card to bring out 2 more drones, and then yeah. So I ended up with I ended up with like 4 drones against me, and I was stunned. So I took like 8 damage from those drones. And I think I was in dense. It was just really bad timing. It was the one time I was in dense or something, and so it was really bad. It almost took me down. Um, and then Vision loves Taskmaster because I mean, everybody kind of loves Taskmaster. I think he's kind of hated on as a villain. I'm pretty vocal about that. I think he's still really challenging. Um, but those side schemes with the extra heroes, Vision can clear with his Solar Beam, or even just like a basic activation or two. Uh, and he just loved having. And he has that wild resource in his kit from his Vision Stone, or not Vision Stone, this his stone, and yeah, so it was really easy to get the kickers on those, and it was honestly just kind of a stomp from that particular scenario because I drew all 4 or 5 of them. Um, so so I was a little optimistic going into the other matches, um, which went okay. Um, so second match was against Nebula, everybody's favorite, with Temporal, and then of course the the Power Stone and the ship command, like there always is, right? Um, you can see very clearly that my first loss was a Nebula loss. It was one of those, you know, oh, I think I drew an untimely Dark Dealings that flipped the scheme, and then there was no coming back at that point because I think it was like turn 2 or turn 3 or something, and there was just no way to control it at all. So then I fell down to standard 1 or standard 2 expert 1, and actually we managed to scrape out a win that actually felt really good, but it's one of those situations where Nebula sometimes just feels like she doesn't have fangs. Um, she did have some surging going on and some techniques and things. Oh, I should have put in the notes here. Best card is like actually, and I called this from his pack. My favorite overall Vision card is actually Super Dense Strike, which because just how efficient it is. Like it clears tough and does 5 damage for 2 resources, and it's a superpower that he can pay for with Deft Focus. Like it's a really good card, super underrated. I honestly would. There was a couple games that I finished. I think it was this one that I used his density manipulation or density control to grab that instead of a solar beam, which is your usual target because it has an extra 2 damage because I could pay for it, and she also had a tough from her various techniques, and so I was able to clear the tough and then nuke her down with the solar beam I had in hand plus whatever else was on the board. Third one was really close, actually. I think I was literally like a few health away from finishing her. Yeah, that was one where I was just short. I still think she had 13 health, and I had a solar beam and a basic activation left, like that I could get out, and just barely didn't. I was playing, so using aggression, I was playing my own version of like the obvious minion collector build where you seek out the minions and then you just face tank them the whole time in intangible, and then you just draw a ton of cards from it using bring it and enjoy it. But yeah, there was a couple times here where I had basically nothing I could do to damage wise to Nebula in my hand, which allowed her, and I didn't have a bring it despite having 3 or 4 minions in front of me, and it just didn't have bring it even though I have 3 copies in the deck and they were all in the deck. I just never drew it when I needed it, which could just be chalked up to luck. But and then when I did have it, I had 1 minion. That's how those kinds of cards go. Just like band to or is it band together? The one that generates resources for leadership based off how many allies you have. Um, so anyways, it just barely fell short from a couple bad draws there. Otherwise, this one could have easily been converted to a match win. Density control is awesome for these kinds of sit and intangible builds. You just get out all your density controls, and then you make sure that you time it properly. It's a little tricky. I did it wrong a couple times. You flip up, you time your flip to dense to get the extra resource from flipping, and then go grab your 2 attack events. Like I said, super dense strike, perfectly legitimate option most of the time, but it just was a couple times where I wasn't quite able to close it out in time, and they were able to get that hand back. But this is a good one. Third one is a very similar situation, except it basically seems like what Vision was built for. Um, he loves the idea of Green Goblin. For the most part, because of all the little tiny piddly minions that's going to hit him. I think the only one in his deck that can actually hurt him is the monster that can actually hit for 1. Now, Green Goblin himself, he's hitting for a base 2 and then 3, so he is actually hitting through intangible pretty much every time, especially on standard 2 expert 2, but that's nothing you can't handle if you're careful, you don't get really unlucky, and you're using your first aids and reboots when you can. So I won the first one. I felt great. I was like, oh, this is easy. I was made for this. This hero is made for this. It's going to be an easy wipe. Um, Second one, again, where's Bring It? It wasn't there. So I, you know, couldn't finish it out. It felt great to just kind of accumulate all the minions, draw a ton of cards. I had a 14 card hand once. I think it was 14. It was either 12 or 14, but I looked at it. I was like, I couldn't fit it all in my hand. Because I actually did include Hall of Heroes in it, and I somehow had managed to get up 3 counters, so I was in dense a little bit more than I should have been. So I managed to get up 3 counters, had flipped down, used Hall of Heroes, flipped up, drew 3 cards from Bring It, um, flipped into, I forget what I did, but anyways, I had a lot of cards in my hand, which felt great. And so that was the one that I won. Um, this is another one where I just felt that he couldn't quite burst those last couple little bits of damage, especially if his attack events are hiding in his deck still. The density manipulation or density control doesn't actually go find them, and so he just almost that two attack is just not quite enough for him. But obviously he couldn't be three. But it felt great to treat the Kree militants like babies. Like, oh, I'm gonna go find the Kree commando and just sit there. So yeah, this one felt great. The final, the penultimate or the ultimate showdown, he literally had 1 health left that I couldn't get off of him because I didn't draw Bring It in either of the last two turns when I needed it to really go find another attack event, or just the ability to do something, another ally even. Oh, also I had the Thor ally in this. Oh man, he did so much work. The Thor ally with Boot Camp did 4. Thor, the Odinson, not Jane Foster. So he did, he used an energy resource from the free resource and did 4 damage to like 7 minions one time. Completely cleared all of the, Goblin Guard ones, the Goblin Thralls, and severely weakened all the heavy hitters from the Kree Commandos. It was awesome. So highly recommend that kind of deck. Highly recommend him in that deck. And this is really fun. This one basically should not have existed. This is Collector with Master of Time. Not that I would have known, because, well, both of them were over in 1 or 2 turns. Because the very first time I got a really nasty. So I'll start with this. So I was thinking, okay, it's Collector, I have Leadership, I'm Vision, right? So I can actually sit there and mostly tank the Collector's attacks himself because he's only hitting for like 1 or 2 on his first phase. I forget. I think it's 2. But he's not hitting for too hard. So I can actually just sit here and bide my time and build up a huge board state of massive allies. So basically play it like a multiplayer deck, right? I had Avengers Assemble, I like Black Panther ally, I had, Giant Man, and so I was going to build up a board state of like 4 or 5 allies and use, what's that card? I think it's Band Together to generate a ton of resources to deal with the collection and to deal with getting more cards out. And then I was just going to bop him, right? Like this should have been something that I would have been able to control. But the very first game, the very first turn, I took 8, 9 damage from the activation. It was ridiculous. Even though I was still an intangible, it was just bad luck. No, it was 2 different activations that got me down. Anyways, had to flip to heal, and that would have been fine because it was at 0 threat, and he's pretty good at controlling threat. But then, of course, I drew Dark Dealings on after the collector's activation, and with the single scheme, solo problems just gone. Second time, drew my obligation on the first turn, and had to get down, and the exact same thing happened again. So just a complete wash, just not a thing. So my plan was brilliant. I think there was a pretty good chance of it succeeding. You're always going to be vulnerable to dark dealings, but honestly, Vision has so much innate threat removal because even when you're an intangible, you can thwart for 2, which is great. You're basically, you're playing like your his girlfriend. You're playing like your Wanda. You're just thwarting every turn and then using your cards to do everything else, right? Um, so he really doesn't have too much problem clearing the threat that he accrues from something like that as long as he doesn't have to flip on the same turn that he gets it. And so it's just really bad luck. But that's Collector 1. And the final match was great. I mean, the first game I managed to scrape out a win. I was using Justice. Again, still spent most of my time in intangible. I think that's just kind of the way that you spend most of your time as Vision, right? I mean, two, you know, two damage reduction for free from every attack sounds great, especially when you're dealing with MODOK and the Doomsday Chair. So it was Doomsday Chair and Goblin Gimmicks. And Doomsday Chair, MODOK came out in all three games, I think, and he just kind of sat there. And then I think maybe he schemed against me for two once when I opted to give up the first scheme because I needed to go heal and stuff. Um, but first one felt pretty good. It was a really close one, but I won, and it was cool. Second game was a beatdown. Just couldn't yeah, I just couldn't gain a foothold. Claw drawing two boost attacks with his attack, or two boost cards with his attack, combined with the goblin gimmicks, which has, as you can see, that triple boost has a lot of triple and double boost icons. And you couple that with standard 2 expert 2. Um, you end up with a lot of give an additional activation card, give an additional boost card, or sorry, give an additional boost card, give an additional boost card, because you have twice the chance to get it on any given attack. And so his boost chains just got a little too ridiculous for me to deal with in that second turn. And then the third one, I was really excited. I was like, yeah, the final showdown, this is going to be great. And yeah, well, I lost on turn one, so you'll wait till the end, and I'll show you what happened. But it was literally turn one. So, justice, I felt all right. I was trying out his meditation justice idea, right, that he came with, and that the game that I won, I did manage to keep, even through formidable foe. I managed to confuse Claw a couple of times to allow me to flip down and do things that I needed, and also was able actually to get that up as insurance using the sonic rifles, and beat Cop helped keep things under control. It felt pretty good. It kind of played into Vision's strengths a little bit, which is just kind of sitting there, like I said, letting your cards do all the work for you, and just kind of sitting there. Um, yeah. So then my verdict on the Vision. You notice I have his MVP card right there. He is so tanky. Even through that tank, though, surprisingly, I think you'd be surprised by how much damage you end up taking, right? Especially on Standard 2 Expert 2 with all of the boost cards coming at you. Um, I was regularly taking, 2, 3 damage per attack, even through Intangible, which is kind of silly, right? Um, he's so flexible, though. Like I said, he has all of his, you could flip to dense and do a bunch of damage, but still have some thwart events to play to get rid of threat. Um, Honestly, all of his aspects are going to work. Obviously, I didn't get to play leadership very much. I think that would be his weakest in that there's no real particular synergy. I don't think, maybe you could do something along the lines of like a reboot plus like hero buffing thing, but that just really doesn't work except for on Quicksilver, I think. But um, like in Moxie, right? Moxie's cool. So you could kind of try to play around with that. It wasn't the right choice for Collector 1, obviously. That's why I didn't try it. Not that it would have changed anything, but um, I don't know. He's viable in all the aspects. First aid, honestly, I've never included it as much as I have here. I haven't played a ton of Drax, so maybe once I play a lot of Drax, I'll also start including that a lot. But first aid is great. And then it was weird. I don't. Maybe it's because of the deck building. Maybe whatever. There's even more than with Valkyrie. I felt like I just sometimes had just a dead hand. I had a bunch of resources or ability on the board to pay for stuff, and just things that I didn't want to pay for in my hand. I don't really know why. It's something I'll keep an eye on, but it certainly was there. I felt it. Um, Now, one thing I did forget to mention is that, there's all the controversy about his setup, where intuitively he starts in intangible form. Um, and so you would think that you would drop to 6 cards because his alter ego says that, he gets +1 hand size and intangible, but technically in the rules you don't draw up until after the setup phase, which is when you put the form upgrade in play, or like before that you put that you do anyways. There's some timing problems. I played since I was playing Standard 2 Expert 2, I was like, things are already going to be difficult enough. I'm curious, maybe they're going to rule that he is allowed to start with 6 hand size. So I played like that in all of these. But once I get down to Standard to Expert 1, from any of it, I will start playing. Probably even just like a Standard 1 Expert 2, I'll probably play with the starting hand size of 5. But give us a ruling, guys. Like, don't give us a hero that is going to cause divorces because people are fighting about like hand size, like just tension, because there's perfectly good arguments for both. Preliminary rating for him is definitely an A plus. I agree with pretty much everybody else. He's A or A plus. I wouldn't quite put him at S. He's just a little too clunky, a lot more clunky than basically the only true S tier character we have in Strange, Doctor Strange. I don't know. I'd almost most of the time I'd probably rather have Captain America. I don't know. Things are a little weird with Standard 2 Expert 2 and taking two things to stun. I think in Standard 2 Expert 2 Vision might be better, but under normal circumstances where you don't have formidable foe, you might still be better off with Cap. But he's definitely up there. It was a lot of fun. Very cool. So then here's the bonus picture. So if you look on the left, this is how my first turn against Claw happened. So he draws 2 boost cards for his activation, right? So he drew Overwhelming Force and Sonic Converter. So total of 5 damage plus an additional boost card, which he drew into 1. So 6 minus 2 is plus the 1 from his base attack. So he has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 damage. So he did 5 to me, which brought me down to 6 HP. He draws Claw's Vengeance as his only encounter card. I get Dark Dealings and MODOK. Dark Dealing gives an additional boost card, which went into Intimidation, which also gives an additional boost card. So that's the other thing that I forgot to mention. I think Goblin Gimmicks is going to see, if anybody's crazy enough to play Standard 2 Expert 2, Goblin Gimmicks is going to, like, people consider it to be kind of a weak modular set, like one of the weakest, but it is not in Standard 2 Expert 2 because of things like this. It stacks with Intimidation, right? Like this Intimidation helped draw into a Goblin Glider for an additional 3 pips, and there's a bunch of those in the Goblin Gimmicks. So anyways, I was at 6 HP. He's got 1 attack, 2 from Dark Dealings, or it goes up to 2, up to 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Exactly enough damage to kill me turn 1 with nothing I could do. Because of course, I think I even had his dense defense upgrade in my hand, but of course I wasn't going to flip up to dense on turn 1, right? I'll be able to tank this with intangible. Nope. So what's next? I am going to try to do this for all the heroes, and I'll kind of give a rundown about how I feel about them afterwards, like something like this. Maybe my PowerPoint skills will improve. Probably not. Don't count on it. But I'll probably do the same thing for everybody, just to kind of get a baseline and really make sure that I play at least 5 sets, up to 15 games with every hero again, and just really see how they feel, see how I'm really feeling about them, and how they stack up to Standard 2 Expert 2. And after I'm done with all that, which will take a long time, especially when you're keeping up with new releases, I should have a really cool data set that I can share. So next up is we're starting from the base. So we got Spider-Man and Captain Marvel for next time. I've already drawn my scenarios for Spider-Man, and I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be interesting. So let me know if you have any other thoughts, or want to see more of this, or don't want to see more of this, or want to volunteer to be my PowerPoint person. That would be great. And I'll see you for the next time.